The morning she left started like any other. I scrambled eggs while Carter sat at the kitchen island, hunched over a bowl of cereal, flipping through one of his old Pokemon books. Melissa drifted into the room barefoot, humming something off-key, her hair pulled into a loose, lopsided bun. She kissed Carter on the head, grabbed a mug of coffee, and launched into her newest idea like she was pitching it on Shark Tank. A mobile flower shop, she said, eyes bright. Picture it, a vintage camper, all pastel and plants, parked outside weddings and farmers markets. I gave her a half smile, the same one I'd used a dozen times before when she brought up a new dream. Sounds charming, I said, sipping my coffee. In my head, I was already tallying how much something like that would cost. We had savings, but they were for Carter's college. A nest egg, not a fairy tale. Melissa didn't notice the hesitation in my voice. Or maybe she did and chose to ignore it. She'd always been like that, brimming with energy and whimsical plans that never quite made it past the sketchbook. Last year it was opening a cat cafe. Before that, she wanted to write a children's book series about a time-traveling duck. I used to find her ideas endearing, even exciting. But over the years, something in me hardened. Bills had a way of killing magic. Carter was mostly quiet that morning, spooning cereal into his mouth while sneaking glances between us. He wasn't used to our mornings being quiet. Usually, Melissa would be dancing barefoot to some Fleetwood Mac song, or narrating her dreams from the night before in wild, theatrical detail. But that day she seemed focused. Almost too focused. After breakfast, I loaded the dishwasher while Melissa disappeared upstairs, saying something about needing to check on something. Carter brushed his teeth like usual, humming some tune to himself as he stood on his little step stool in front of the mirror. That's when I noticed the duffel bag. It was leaning by the back door, zipped up and out of place. I assumed at first it was for Goodwill. Melissa was always cleaning out closets on a whim. But something about the way it was placed, tucked just enough out of sight but still within reach, didn't sit right with me. "Hey, Mel," I called. No answer. I found her upstairs in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone. Her back was to me. She jumped a little when I spoke. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," she said quickly, too quickly. "Just texting my mom." I nodded, trying not to make anything of it. "Carter's almost ready for school." "Okay," she said. "I'll drive him." I offered to go instead. I usually did, but she insisted, her tone firmer than usual. When they left, I stayed behind and wiped down the counters, still thinking about that bag. Something didn't feel right, but I pushed the thought away. I told myself she probably needed space, or maybe she really was just on one of her spontaneous errands. But when Carter came home from school that afternoon, he walked in holding a note from the teacher, but no Melissa. "Mom said you'd pick me up," he said, confused. My stomach dropped. I tried her phone. Straight to voicemail. Then I saw the kitchen table. An old postcard was sitting on it, flipped over, the kind tourists used to buy at gas stations along the interstate. The photo side was of a sunset over some nameless lake. The handwriting on the back was unmistakably hers. "I'm sorry. I need to do this. Please tell Carter I love him." No salutation. No destination. Just that. I read it 3 times, hoping I had misinterpreted it. But the words didn't change. She was gone. Just like that. I don't know how long I stood there, holding that card, staring out the kitchen window. The wind was picking up, bending the trees in the yard. Carter's bike was tipped over on its side. It all felt surreal, like I'd stumbled into a scene from someone else's life. I wanted to believe it was just a meltdown, some kind of dramatic stunt. Maybe she'd check into a spa for a few days, or go stay with her sister in Nashville. Maybe she'd come back with some excuse and a sheepish smile. But she didn't pack for a weekend. I checked the closets. Her favorite sweaters were missing. So were the Polaroids she kept on the dresser and her grandmother's locket. She hadn't just left the house, she had left us. The next few hours passed in a haze. I made dinner because Carter asked if we were still eating. I nodded. We had mac and cheese. He didn't ask where she was, not right away. But I knew he knew something was off. That night, after he went to bed, I sat alone in the living room. The silence in the house was different, heavier, more final. I looked through the bank account, almost out of instinct. I wish I hadn't. Our savings account, the one we'd both contributed to for the past 10 years, was empty. Not just low. Empty. All that money we'd saved for Carter's future, for emergencies, for things that mattered, them. I barely slept. My mind kept playing tricks on me, imagining Melissa's voice calling from the hallway or the sound of her footsteps on the stairs. But the house stayed quiet, and I stayed alone. By the time the sun came up, I knew this wasn't a fluke. This wasn't her being dramatic. This wasn't a whim. Melissa was gone. And she'd taken more than just herself with her. The morning after Melissa vanished, I woke up with a pounding headache and the kind of heavy chest that no amount of sleep could lift. Carter was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the couch with a blanket wrapped around him and the TV turned to some cartoon he wasn't really watching. He looked over at me and asked in the smallest voice, "Is Mom still gone?" I didn't know how to answer that. I nodded slowly and rubbed the back of my neck, like maybe I could massage the right words out. Yeah, but she needed some time. He didn't say anything else. Just turned back to the screen, but I could tell he wasn't buying it. Carter's always been smart, too smart sometimes. He saw through things before most kids his age even noticed them. I poured myself a cup of coffee, the last of it, and stared at the toaster like it had betrayed me too. My hands were shaking. I couldn't stop running through the last 24 hours like a movie reel on repeat. The bag, the postcard, the empty savings account. It wasn't just the money that stung. It was the planning, the calculated nature of it all. She'd kissed Carter on the head that morning, smiled at me like everything was fine, and then walked out the door with a duffel bag full of secrets. I sat down at the table and opened my laptop. I needed answers, or at least something to hold on to. The savings account was gone. Every dollar. Transferred out 2 days before she left. But there was more. There were charges I didn't recognize, big ones. Equipment rental, floral wholesalers, a deposit on something called Silver Oak Lakefront Suites. And then I saw it, a loan account opened under both of our names. $22,000. I blinked at the number like it might change if I stared long enough. But there it was. Not just opened, at least. The balance was down to a few $100, and the rest had already been withdrawn or spent. I felt sick. Physically sick. I rushed to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. My reflection looked older, thinner somehow, like the betrayal had started aging me in real time. That afternoon, a letter showed up in the mailbox. Thick envelope, bold lettering. At first I thought it was junk mail. Then I opened it. Notice of payment due, final warning. The loan was past its first due date, and the late fees were already piling up. The notice said failure to pay would result in the bank seeking recovery from collateralized assets, namely, the house. My house. Carter's home. Melissa had used our home as collateral. Without telling me. Without a single word. I sat down on the porch steps, the letter trembling in my hands. I felt like I was slipping underwater and couldn't come up for air. Later that night, I was folding laundry while Carter got ready for bed. I heard him brushing his teeth, humming the same tune as always. But then he called out to me. "Dad." "Yeah, bud." "I don't think Mom just went to get space." I stopped folding. "Why do you say that?" He came into the room slowly, his toothbrush still in his hand. "I think she's hiding." I tried to keep my voice calm. "Why do you think that, Carter?" He shuffled over to the couch and sat beside me. "Remember that GPS app we used for our hiking trip last year?" I nodded. "I checked it. Her phone still shows up on it." I stared at him, unsure what to say. "She's in Silverwood," he said simply. "At a place called Lakefront Lodge." I looked it up. "It's not far." My mouth went dry. "Carter, how did you even?" "I just wanted to know," he shrugged. "I thought you'd want to know too." He said it like it was nothing, but the weight of his words crushed me. My 10-year-old son had done what I hadn't even thought of. He had gone looking for the truth. And he found it. That night, after he went to bed, I checked the app myself. Sure enough, there it was. Melissa's phone, pinging from a motel tucked along the edge of Silverwood Lake. I pulled up the address, then cross-referenced the lodge's website. They offered long-term stays. A camper van was listed in the guest parking directory. I wasn't surprised anymore. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my laptop against the wall. But instead I just sat there, hollowed out by the truth. I had always assumed Melissa lived in the clouds, chasing dreams and crashing into reality. But this was intentional, deliberate, and I wasn't even the only person she'd betrayed. The name popped into my head like a punch: Daryl. A mechanic I had once helped out, back when he was in a mess with the IRS. Melissa used to bring Carter by the shop with cookies. Said Daryl was one of the good ones. And suddenly it all fit. I checked her call log. The number that popped up most frequently in the last month? Daryl's. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling like it might offer an explanation. But the truth was simple. She hadn't just left. She'd run. She'd lied. And she hadn't done it alone. 3 days after Melissa disappeared, Carter came into the living room holding his iPad like it was the key to some mystery he'd just unlocked. "I found her," he said. I blinked. "What?" "I called the place," he continued, like it was the most casual thing in the world. "The motel. Silverwood Lakefront Lodge. I told them I was confirming a flower delivery for Melissa Thomas." He paused, watching my face for a reaction. I didn't even know what to say. "They said she's been staying there for over a week. With someone else." I set down the cup of coffee I hadn't even realized I was holding. "Carter, you did what?" "I needed to know," he said, almost defensively. "You weren't doing anything." He wasn't wrong. I'd been paralyzed. Numb. Lost between heartbreak and damage control. The loan, the house, my job. I was trying to keep everything from crumbling while pretending Melissa had just slipped through a crack in the floor instead of detonating a bomb in our lives. "How did you know what to say?" I asked, still stunned. He shrugged. "Watched a YouTube video once where someone pretended to be a delivery guy. People talk when you sound like you know what you're doing." I should have been mad. But all I felt was pride. Not in the situation, but in his clarity. His composure. I was the adult, the one who should have been shielding him from all of this. But somehow, it was Carter who was dragging the truth into the light. "She's with someone named Daryl," he added, more quietly this time. "The guy with the garage? The one you helped?" I nodded slowly, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. I remembered the way Melissa used to say Daryl was different. He'd helped her change a flat tire once. That's how it started. At least, that's what she told me back then. I'd thought nothing of it. Why would I? He was just a scruffy guy who couldn't file taxes to save his life. But maybe that's exactly why she liked him. He was messy, spontaneous, the kind of chaos that made her feel alive. And I was the opposite. I kept us grounded. I paid bills. I booked dentist appointments and kept our car insurance current. I was the stable one. I was the boring one. "Should we go there?" Carter asked. I looked at him. Really looked at him. His face was calm, but his eyes were tired. Worn in a way no 10-year-old's eyes should be. And yet he didn't look afraid. "No," I said at first. "We're not doing anything rash." But later that night I changed my mind. I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Melissa's face in my mind, not the way she used to smile at me when we danced in the kitchen, but the way she'd looked that last morning. Like she already had one foot out the door. I got up, found Carter still awake in bed, playing with his flashlight and whispering to himself. "Couldn't sleep," he said when I walked in. "We're going," I told him. "Tomorrow." He didn't smile, but he nodded. We left early the next morning. I didn't tell anyone where we were going. Just threw some snacks and bottled water into the car, grabbed a folder of paperwork, and made sure Carter had his jacket. The drive to Silverwood was long and mostly quiet. Carter stared out the window, headphones on, legs kicking the dashboard in rhythm to whatever he was listening to. I kept thinking about what I was going to say, how I was going to keep it together in front of her, how I was going to look into the face of the woman I thought I knew and ask, why? Silverwood was smaller than I remembered. A sleepy lake town, mostly locals and tourists with boats they couldn't afford. The lodge was just off the main road, a cluster of red-painted cabins and a gravel lot full of old pickups and trailered jet skis. We parked across the street. Waited. And there she was. Melissa stepped out of one of the cabins like she was on vacation. She wore a sundress, her hair up, sunglasses perched on her head. She looked happy. Not manic. Not regretful. Just settled. Comfortable. Daryl was with her. He handed her a coffee and sat beside her on a patio chair. They laughed. She touched his arm. I felt like the ground was disappearing beneath me. Carter spoke first. "Can we go talk to her now?" I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. We crossed the road together. I didn't rush. Didn't shout. Just walked straight up to her like I was coming home from work. Her smile vanished the second she saw us. "Tom," she said, her voice cracking. I said nothing at first. Just held out the folder I'd brought, the loan papers, the bank statements, screenshots of the GPS log. Everything. Daryl looked over her shoulder, saw the documents, and froze. "What the hell is this?" he asked. Melissa didn't answer. "I suggest you ask her," I said to him, calm as I could manage. He didn't say another word. Just got up and walked away, hands in his pockets, muttering something under his breath. Melissa stood there, stunned. The silence stretched. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. "I know everything," I told her. "You lied. You stole. You ran." Her hands shook. She looked down, as if the gravel under her sandals had something more important to say. "I never wanted to hurt Carter," she whispered. "You didn't just hurt him," I said. "You left him. You left us." Carter stood beside me the whole time, quiet and still. And for the first time, I realized he wasn't here for answers. He wasn't hoping she'd apologize. He just wanted her to see him, see what she walked away from. And she did. I could see it hit her. He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He just said, "I guess you chose him." Melissa broke then. Her face crumpled and she reached for him, but he stepped back. Not angrily, just from. We didn't stay long after that. I had all the confirmation I needed. It took longer than I thought to feel normal again. Whatever that word even means after your wife disappears with your money, your trust, and a mechanic named Daryl. We got home from Silverwood late that night. Neither of us said much on the drive back. Carter dozed off in the passenger seat halfway through, clutching a juice box he never opened. I didn't turn on the radio. The silence was easier. Back in the house, everything looked the same, which somehow made it worse. The folded laundry on the couch. Melissa's book left open on the nightstand. Her coffee mug still in the sink. Like she might walk through the door at any moment and ask what we wanted for dinner. She didn't. The next morning, I called the police and filed a fraud report. They didn't act shocked. They see this kind of thing more than people realize. I submitted the loan documents, the account history, and even a screenshot of the GPS logs that placed her at the lodge during the dates the funds were withdrawn. The officer assigned to my case, a guy named Jenkins, told me they'd freeze the remaining account and initiate an investigation. It wasn't justice, exactly, but it was something. Then came the custody filing. That was easier than I expected. I attached everything: proof of abandonment, financial recklessness, the fact that Melissa hadn't even called Carter in 2 weeks. She didn't show up for the court hearing. No emails, no lawyer, no apology. Just an empty seat with her name on it. The judge looked over everything, asked me a few questions, and granted me full custody. Minimal child support. Enforcement pending. I didn't hold my breath. Carter was quiet when I told him. He asked if he had to say anything in court. I said no, it was already done. He just nodded and went back to reading. I think part of him had already processed it long before the judge put it on paper. A few weeks later, Melissa tried to access the frozen account. I got an alert through the banking app, something I'd set up after the fraud report. The notification popped up while I was helping Carter with his science project. "There she is," he said flatly, like he was talking about a glitch in a video game. We watched the alert together. I stared at the screen for a while, waiting for something. Anger, maybe, or the familiar sting of betrayal. But all I felt was distance. Like it was happening to someone else. That was the last real contact we had. The police were notified of the account attempt and eventually tracked her to a campground outside Mobile, Alabama. They called me for a statement. I gave them what they needed and declined to be notified of the outcome. I didn't want to know. We sold the camper van. Not for much, but enough to cover the essentials. Groceries. Carter's school clothes. A few overdue bills. I took on more hours at the hospital, switching to night shifts 3 times a week. Tiring but steady. Honest. Carter started a bake sale project at school. He called it the Restart Fund. Made flyers. Talked the principal into letting him use the teacher's lounge once a week. The neighborhood got involved, then some local shops. People we barely knew started showing up. A few even slipped money into the jar without taking anything. He raised $317 in 2 weeks. I matched it and took him out for burgers and milkshakes. Feels like things are getting better, he said between sips. Yeah, I told him. They are. The house is quieter now. Cleaner. No more half-finished art projects on the table. No more arguments about things we couldn't afford. No more pretending we were okay when we weren't. Our mornings are simple. Toast and coffee. Carter's cereal. Some days he reads the weather report out loud like he's on the news. Other days we sit in silence, comfortable and unforced. Some nights he still asks questions. About Melissa. About why she left. I tell him the truth, gently. She got lost, I say. And sometimes when people are lost, they make bad choices. Do you think she'll ever come back? I don't know, I say. But if she does, we'll know how to handle it. And that's the thing, we do. We know how to handle it now. The chaos. The fallout. The quiet. We've walked through all of it, and we're still standing. Carter's laugh sounds different these days. Deeper, maybe. More grounded. He still plays video games and builds weird inventions in the garage, but there's a seriousness to him now. A quiet strength. One night, as we sat on the porch playing cards, he looked up and said, I don't think Mom coming back would fix anything. No, I agreed. It wouldn't. He nodded once and went back to shuffling. And just like that, the chapter closed. Not with a dramatic speech or a final confrontation, but with understanding. With presence. We weren't trying to fix the past anymore. We were building something new. Something quiet. Something steady. We didn't need the storm to explain itself. We'd already survived it.